All right, so welcome, folks. It is March 20th, Wednesday. I just got home a few minutes ago from a fun trip with my family up in the mountains. Sorry for the echo. This is finally, I'm in my new office that I've been waiting months to get in. And also, hopefully, in 2 weeks, my studio will be done as well. So, thank you for your patience with me just being in random places doing these classes. Forgive, please, the echo, although it's going to come in handy because we're going to be talking about echo today as we talk about shapes. But let's dig in. This is week, I believe, session three of our shape conversation. If you've ever seen my paintings, you probably know that I'm a shape guy. I really like the interactions of shapes above any of the other elements. I'm not a big line guy. I do like value, but value and shape share an awful lot. They have a lot in common. I'm not a big texture guy. I do enjoy surfaces, but I don't paint thick paint. For me, shape is a big deal. And so there are two parts that I want to get into in these next couple of weeks. On one side, I do this often, is the idea of harmony and unity. When things come together in a positive way, in a satisfying way, that's one artistic approach. Another artistic approach is the idea of contrast. When things do not blend together, instead they create a kind of impact. They smash into each other and they draw attention to themselves. So this is what we'll talk about first, the idea of shape harmony. We're coming off a session. I loved what you guys put on the Facebook page, the repetition, and the goal was to do repetition and have variety. Let me see if I can point these out up here. You'll notice a lot of these principles are sort of two sides of the same coin. I think we all agree we want our shapes to have variety so that they're not boring, but you kind of need them to be repetitive in a sense so that they adhere together, so that they're cohesive. And the same idea here with harmony and unity. And by the way, most books will list these as two separate things. They're kind of the same thing. I looked it up in the thesaurus, and like the fourth word under harmony was unity. So these things have a lot in common. I'm going to make some demonstrations, do a few painting annotations today, just to get this idea across. The reason I'm going to put so much energy into this is one of those things when a painting is going bad and you just don't know what to do with it. This is one of those things to test out and say, how are my shapes? What's the balance between the parts? Do I have too much difference? In which case you'd say to yourself, this feels really chaotic, or it feels too busy. I hear that all the time in critiques. I say, what do you feel is wrong with this picture? It's too busy. That means you have too much variety for your taste. If it is, this is too blah, people will say that. This is too blah. This is too boring. That usually means you have too much harmony and unity. So you're always trying to kind of balance those things out, that it's not so harmonious that it is boring. Sometimes when it's really harmonious, like minimalist abstraction, it's so harmonious that that's kind of the point. But sometimes it's so chaotic and disunified. I would say German expressionism, if you're familiar with that genre or that kind of grouping, to me feels very chaotic. It feels very disunified. The color groupings feel strange to me. And obviously that's just my own personal choice. But here's what we'll do. I'm going to talk in these next few weeks, and I've got this set up. I don't know if it's going to work. Let me see here. Oh, maybe I've been on the wrong microphone this whole time. I've set up a little piano that I can play into the microphone. Pretty soon I'll have it working better. But this is the basic idea, is that here is something that is harmonious. See, it makes sense together, or even this. And here's something with a little bit of contrast. You hear there's a discord there. And Scott's wife is a musician. I'm talking out of school, Scott. Tell me, what does she play? Is she violin, piano?
She's a violinist and an orchestra teacher.
Oh, well, let's get her in here then. Perfect. And so the words that I use in composition, and I know Joe Podlesnik is similar to this, are things like harmony, dissonance, rhythm, repetition, all of those things. So I love using music to and poetry, although I'm not very well versed, so to speak, in poetry. But I love, oh, Joe is here. Where's Joe? Great. Yeah, Joe, so just pop things into the comment section as we're talking. Joe, for those of you who saw last week, Joe Podlesnik came, and it's always such a joy to share his work with you guys, and even just for me to look at it. It reminds me what art does. When you worry about, man, is this going to sell? Or is my neighbor going to think this is good? Is my wife going to think this is good? What do I do with it if it doesn't sell? Like, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that you get caught up in as an artist. Then when I see Joe's work, it reminds me, oh yeah, there I am. There's kind of the DNA where everything I do comes from. So anyway, it was great to have Joe, and we're going to include Joe a little bit more in this group, and have him to the point where we may even get him doing some side critiques. He's great. He's a master critique artist, I guess you could call it. And so anyway, all this stuff's moving. Scott's here. We've been talking. You guys missed, if you missed the pre-class chat, sorry I didn't record it, but it was as most of my conversations with Scott, it seemed very fruitful and interesting. So anyway, you guys get the idea that we're moving some of these into a direction where we get to share and collaborate with various artists rather than just me up here, blah, 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 here's what I think. So today's talk is going to be about shape unity and harmony, meaning they play nicely together. Again, I don't know what you guys are hearing on the piano, but here are some notes that play nicely together. I'll turn that up a little bit. Those all play nicely. That's unity and harmony. This is discord. And maybe that's what you want. Maybe in your song there's a piece that goes, creates some tension, something like that. And so today it will be more about the harmony and the unity, the satisfying, pleasurable part of repetition. And then next week we'll talk about that contrast and that discord that really brings a kind of emotional impact. So I've got a really simple thing I want to show you guys. A few simple things I want to show you. This principle came to me. I was teaching an abstract class, and I like to use, this is the artist Jenny Nelson. She is one of the very best, I would say, quote unquote, designer abstract. I don't mean that dismissively. I mean her ability to compose in a pleasing way without it being overly pre-digested or whatever word you want to use. It's got just enough grit for me to stay in the authenticity world, but it has enough beauty for me to think it's also, and I mean this in the nicest way too, it's also decorative. It's kind to my aesthetic needs without being condescending, I guess. But here's a great trick Jenny does, and I think part of this may just be her nature. When you're an abstract painter, you don't really have a lot of choice but to repeat certain things. And when we get into color next month, I think that's what we'll be doing. I'll show you the version, but watch this. Watch how many places Jenny has this kind of thing happening. There's one there. Kind of got one over here. There's one over here. Somewhere one here. Definitely happening here and there. And there, and up here. But if I take that away, it's not readily apparent that she's doing that. She's being very subtle with her use of that repetition, and it isn't just raw repetition. It's what I'm saying, this harmonious echoing. See how I said echo, because my room is echoey, that was going to come in handy today. She's not repeating precisely. She's creating an echo here, echo there, without just a repetition. And Joe just commented, very repetition. Absolutely, there's something right in there. You don't want to just dive in and start doing things like, okay, this needs a little bit more variety. And then you just do this sort of a thing, and maybe you would do that and then come back from it. But she's being very subtle. It's staying in the same camp without being exactly the same. So I'm going to show you a few more versions of this in action in some representational painting too. We should have a weekly segment called Andrew Wyeth is a Genius. So look at this Wyeth for a minute. I'll get rid of my camera. Give this Wyeth a look, and Karen just asked I wonder if she's conscious of doing that. I can tell you from the perspective of somebody who does do abstract art, it's your words. You end up with a certain narrow vocabulary at a certain point that you know that those are your words. The same way you choose a narrow palette or group of colors that you tend to use. Jenny also does that. Most artists I know, after a certain number of miles on your brush, you develop tics, little ways you put. Scott gave a whole demonstration about this, about the way you put your paint on. It says a lot about you because you kind of earn the right to say the things you want to say and how you want to say them. So we can ask Jenny. She'll be coming to visit us soon, how conscious she is, but my guess is she's quite aware. Maybe she's not conscious while she's painting, but I bet she's very aware. And Joe's calling those motor neural habits. Thank you for the nerd clarification, Professor Joe. Yes, motor neural meaning your neurons in your brain, that there's a connection between your hand and your eye and practice habits, all that stuff. So while I've been talking, can you guys guess what I'm about to do? Well, Scott can, because I just did it. I'm going to show, and Wyeth is one of the better ones at this. I'm just going to loosely trace this shape. If I cut this out and move it, oh, hey, look at this. There's a very similar variation on that shape. Watch when I take it away. I don't feel like I'm shoehorning this. I think that's an actual, the angles on that rope or wire in the ceiling, to me, are very correspondent with the shape at the bottom. And then there's also even sort of a sub variation of that here. And also I think here, whoops. A piece of it there. These, whether conscious or subconscious, I don't know. My guess is because Wyeth paid so much attention to this kind of thing, I would assume he's doing that on purpose. But when I take it away, I don't think you cannot beat me in an argument where I say that string up there has an echo. It has a relationship with the body that is completely intentional. And Joe says maybe those hooks were used to hang blood sausage. See, this is why we have this group. I had no idea, but that sounds right to me. Yes, and the bed itself. Let's try that. Oh, I can't quite get to it. Hang on. And if I really wanted to start squeezing, yep, absolutely. If I really wanted to start squeezing out other comparisons, here's one. There's this little kind of triangle shape here. Well, it happens again over here in reverse. And it starts to happen. Sorry, I can't quite get down there to see it, like in the ankle. This is the danger of doing all of this technology in class live. There's a little piece right here. It's probably, I would argue, maybe a little something like right there. Possibly some of it in here. So those echoes, I'm not saying that you have to consciously decide ahead of time what you're going to be doing, but look for that stuff. That's going to be the assignment this week. Try to find some echoes between shapes that are not the same thing. This is very important. The objects are not the same. Let's look at this way. So somebody type in some echoes that you're picking up on here. This for me is a little bit more there's a kind of spine. Thank you. Ribs and branches, right? There's a spine in both cases, like a trunk. And then there's this reaching out from the trunk or the spine into space. And I guarantee you this is not accidental. This is how Wyeth composes so deliberately and brilliantly. I think I mentioned something about his ability to narratively express something and then perfectly do it compositionally as well. And sorry, some of them are coming in now in the last one. Sorry if I missed that. But you guys kind of get the gig here, right? And of course, even on things like this, there's something similar going on up here. Like, probably in some of these, we're finding things that don't exist, but the exercise is still valid. Even if they were not intentional, I want you guys to be digging around on some paintings of yours and some paintings of other people to see not shape repetition, but shape echo, shape resonance, that the relationship between two parts isn't identical. They're not twins, they're not siblings, they're not even maybe first cousins, but maybe they are distant cousins. And yes, somebody pointed out lack of life in the tree and the skeleton. Of course, right? This is a picture about death. There's a very clear narrative happening here. We'll do one or two more, and then I'm going to bring Joe and Scott in to kind of give their opinions on this. I don't know if Scott has an opinion on this. Just kidding. Scott has an opinion. So in this case, this is what I'm getting at, that it's, here I have a cliff and here I have a cloud. And before I even draw on it, you guys can probably predict that there's a clear, resonant, echoing relationship between those two parts and between lots of the other parts, but particularly this kind of shape here. If I grab that, and it maps pretty closely, maybe it's a little bit more like this part right there, but look how, even without changing the size of it, how it maps right over the top of this other shape. And it could be that you can overdo this and all of the shapes kind of lose their personality because they're too similar. But if you look up Eric Bowman, Bowman is this guy's name. His paintings tend to have this in spades. He really likes using this technique of repetition. I'll also mention this comes naturally when you paint a lot. And this is where I'll kind of hand it over to Scott to give his opinions. When you paint a lot, you just develop certain tics, certain ways, certain shapes you like to use. For me, it's this kind of rectangle, like a window, not a square necessarily, but it's like a window idea where there's then another sub-rectangle inside. I use that all the time. And I love that when I'm checking for reference materials, when I'm out just driving around. Things that catch my eye tend to be my tics. I tend to be attracted to those. And this, even Joe might be able to say something about this, that over time you develop a desire to have your parts resonating against each other. You start to recognize let's call it your song, or my kids say, this is my jam. Like that. Finding your jam is sort of what this stuff is about. So Scott, if you want to jump in here, give your opinion. While you're talking, I'm going to go grab those texts that you just sent me and see if I can bring them up. We can talk about them.
Well, those images may not actually address what you're talking about here.
Okay.
I'm a little slow to catch up on some things. Don't mind me. It's the way that shapes. For me, it's how the shapes, how they fit into whatever the subject is, and the part that jumped out for me, and it's the thing, my concerns. What you're just talking about is figuring out what the things are that you're attracted to, and how they can, and how that may not always be a good thing.
I say something about you don't want told, right?
Well, I mean, this is actually this is something that I wrestle with constantly, and this is a bit of a tangent that I'd love to talk to Joe about. Is how there can be a disparity between what you think is an interesting image and collection of shapes and composition in a photograph, but how that doesn't necessarily always translate to a painting, and vice versa. Like
yes.
What the differences in the mediums might be. But I'm wandering off topic pretty quickly here. Yeah, I was just this Wyeth is just to understand how he manipulates the surface while he's creating all those shapes and how everything fits together just so.
Yeah, and I think the boots, the idea of the repetition with variation, he's doing a lot of really interesting color. We're not talking about this yet, but let's just point it out. He's doing these harmonious, meaning close in proximity, yellow to red, for example. He's using some color trickery that I doubt was in the actual either photograph or in reality. I'm just going to tease that idea. We'll talk about that when we talk about color.
And a lot of what I see in Wyeth's work is, the other component of a shape. Part of a shape are how all the angles fit together, and that's what I see a lot in Wyeth's work. Is not always a very clear, like, oh, here's an oval, here's another oval, so much as here's this 42-degree angle over here, and there it is again over there.
Oh, please, elaborate on that. I totally missed. Yes.
Just that what is a shape? It's a collection of angles and forms that create some area that's encompassed in some way, and that's what I see in Wyeth's work, more in the angles. Like I'm going to shoot you a text really fast. I should find this. These are images I should find online so we can have big, beautiful renderings of them. I love this particular painting I'm sending you right now because if I can get this thing to work, there we go. Because it's not necessarily about a clear, distinct subject. I stood in front of this painting with, I guess I could share and grab it, show it myself.
Why don't you just keep talking? I'm about
I was standing in front of this painting with a bunch of people in the museum, and I could hear these folks arguing, like, well, what's the point? Where's the focal point? What's the focus? I need to know what I'm supposed to be looking at.
Good, yes.
Something that I talk about with students and think about in my own work, but the way that he repeats angles, which then creates repeated shapes, that it creates a harmony, and there's a rhythm there that is, it just makes sense. And that's how, when I'm with sort of my little corner of the art world, when I think about how shapes fit together, how they repeat, it's often to see how they reflect how a shadow really fits with an object. To see that, that line and that shape is carried over into the shadow. And if you do that, you get that wonderful harmony. And if you get that shape just wonky and strange, or a blur and smear, as folks want to do if they don't want to know what the shadow is, something just doesn't feel as satisfying.
Absolutely. And thanks for those distinctions here. I'm going to share something. We're going to do a poll. Since today is just sort of, we're improvising a lot of this anyway. I've been waiting to do this poll. Oh, here it comes. All right, ready? I'm gonna show you a few images, and then we're gonna ask a question. Oh, Joe lost audio. I'm gonna make sure that no one else lost audio here. We'll wait just a minute. If Joe may have just hit a button and lost his audio. Let's see. Good, thanks guys, thank you. All right, so here comes the poll. What I want you to ask yourself is, which of these, you have to make a choice. Which are the most similar, two of them to each other? Here comes the question. Which two are the most similar? The left and the middle, the left and the right, or the middle and the right? And actually, I'll let you guys go. Here we go. You may need to move that poll out, because on my iPad, the poll actually jumped up in front. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to end this poll. I'm going to do it again. Let me let you see it for a minute. Okay, so the question is going to be, are these two more similar, or are these two more similar, or by extension, are these two more similar? So I'll ask it again, and then I'm going to launch the poll. Do you find the first two shapes have more in common than the second two shapes? That's basically what I'm asking. So here it comes. Make your decision. Here it comes. Ready, go. We'll give you a minute. Not a minute. We'll give you 30 seconds.
It won't let me vote.
Oh, it's because you're a panelist.
I know.
Your opinion doesn't matter.
Apparently my opinion's different.
Oh, guys, good job. You had 84 voted. Let's see if we can get the last couple, if we can get that thing up over 90. All right, I'm going to share it. This is pretty interesting. Ready? Isn't that something? So exactly half of you, we had 84% of you voted. Half of you thought that the circle and the square were the most similar, and half of you thought that the square and the rectangle were most similar. What we're going to do pretty soon here is start putting colors on those, and you guys are going to see that people sort of tend to group things in different ways, shapes in different ways. You know, like the shape character, that it's rectilinear, that it's you know, a square and a rectangle have more in common. A lot of people, or half of you, obviously, because of the size of the two shapes, have enough in common. So I just want to get that idea on the board. We're going to do some more fun. And actually, I think I can get another one up here just quickly. I love this image. All right, same game. I'll give you a minute to look at it. We're going to ask, I'm going to call those 1, 2, and 3. On the left is 1, in the middle is 2, and on the right is 3. And so the poll is going to ask which you think have the most in common. Will it be 1 and 2? Will it be 1 and 3? Or will it be 2 and 3? All right, you ready? Here comes. And I'm going to let you vote this time, Scott. Keep them coming. We're getting there. We're up to 85%. You guys are good at this. That was fast. 88, almost there, almost there. And so this one, I want you, both you, Joe, and Scott, I want you to interpret why you think this result. This will be fun to hear. So now, left and middle, clearly the winner. Left and right, that's funny. Whoever went left and right, the three of you, I kind of feel left and right because of the amount of information that's there. And then about 30% of you went middle and right. So let's speculate. Oh, whoops. We get rid of it. So left and middle was the clear winner.
Yeah, what did you think, Mark?
I think left and right, because to me, middle has so much information and so detailed, and it's so, it's so much not like the other two that for me, and there were only 3 of us that voted that way, so we're in the clear minority.
Yeah, I didn't vote, and I have 2 answers. It's either the middle and right, because the arc and how that, to me, the arc is what so jumps out on this. But and once I think past my first impression, yeah, left and right.
I like, as soon as you said arc, when you said the word arc, now I see middle, right. So what did you say then, left and middle?
Yeah, it's my first glance is middle, right, and then when I think about it for a moment, it's left and right.
And Sonia's pointing out, Sonia's schooled in Gestalt. We'll be talking about that later too. Sonia says, it's the Gestalt. We imagine the rest of the piece on the left, just not just what's there. And I think if we saw all 3 cakes in their entirety, clearly the left and the middle would be the ones because they have most in common color-wise and all that stuff. So the reason I'm doing this is to point out that this is a very complex kind of, it's not a formula. There's a lot going on. As soon as you put one thing in, that throws the balance in a different direction. As soon as you put another thing, that throws the balance. And I want to sort of get the conversation going as we move into doing some critiques and things like that. How to use these tools of saying this shape resonates, quote unquote, with that shape in a certain way. There's a certain magnetism between these 2 shapes. There's a certain echo, a repetition. So it's not just like, give me this, then give me 4 more of them someplace else in the painting. It's like, give me one, give me a flower petal here, and then shift it over there, shift it over there. And Scott, throw in a little talk about being attentive as you're working on that stuff, that you're being attentive.
For me, it's just what we've been talking about, being attentive to the shapes and seeing how they fit together, and seeing how and not just And this is, a lot of what I talk about in painting is how an object fits into a background, and how the background and the foreground might be symbiotic, and seeing how those shapes all have to sort of respect each other. Whereas often if somebody paints this, myself included, would just start tackling that cake in the front, in the middle, and then like the other stuff would be that stuff over there.
Yeah.
And instead seeing how it all fits together, squinting.
Well, imagine if the one on the left had a dark top, how that would completely change the relationship of all the pieces.
Yeah, it is. Everything is about context. I mean, that is that whole rectangle. Is how do things fit, compare, values, colors, shapes. How do they compare to each other? It's that frustrating context.
Yes, and you know what? I'm missing an image, so I'm just going to do this to wrap it up. Tell you guys. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to have Scott there. Me and my guitars. So here is going to be at least this week's assignment. I may drag this out a little bit longer because there's so much room for complex reinterpretation, and it really, I don't think you need to worry about it when you're starting your painting necessarily, but at some point you're going to have to start asking, what's important? How am I echoing that important shape elsewhere? What's the relationship between those parts? Let's get back to this Wyeth just so I can make the point even clearer. I want you guys to find stuff like this or make stuff like this where there's an implied relationship or maybe a little bit more explicit relationship between parts. But I want to start having this conversation in the class of what is it about the relationships between these large pieces, what I call shapes. How do they relate to each other? How do they echo each other? How do they resonate? How do they what's the word you were using, Scott?
Dissonance.
The dissonance between them, and just the musicality. That's how you start thinking abstractly about your compositions, and you get out of the world, as somebody was asking earlier, Dino was asking earlier, how do you stop copying and start interpreting? This is how. You start treating your work as an arrangement of some sort, as opposed to what's the color of the lid on that cup? What's the highlight on that bottle? Does it have a little yellow in it? Don't worry about that. Ask yourself, what's the relationship between that highlight and the highlight on the table? What's the relationship between the scale of the table showing and the amount of background? And as soon as you're thinking abstractly, you will release your need to copy and you will embrace your desire for interpretation.
So I just release your desire. I had this image of the bird being set free. If it loves you, it will come back. I'm going to release my desire to have photorealism be important. And if it comes back, that's fine.
It's yours to keep. Yes. Yeah. That's a great way to put it. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Scott, for being here. And Joe, next time we'll get you on the mic. I'll show you guys how to set that up so you can be on the mic too. But I really like this format where we're chatting and showing and, annotating all sort of in real time. But that's your assignment. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm working on the very thing right there in my fancy new guitar and painting studio. Your assignment, go out there, find it. If we can, let's try to stick to paintings or drawings. I know it's much easier to get photographs going like this. I just think it's more fun in the class to be seeing other, drawings and paintings. We can still have photographs, but could very easily turn into photo sharing, which I don't know. It can be, unless the photos are Ansel Adams and stuff like that. It sounds like I'm saying don't share the photos. I just want to see as many drawings and paintings, at least, probably more, in balance with the photos. So thanks you guys, everybody, and I'll see you over on the Facebook page. Let's do it. This will be a fun week.